because there's just a huge amount of factual nonsense spoken about that, even by the people who claim to have done an accurate land audit, for example. Unfortunately, I was persuaded to change to something more sexy and more interesting, which is robots and sexbots. So that's what I'm going to be talking about and what the future is. Now, as with Francis, I'm going to be stating some facts without necessarily knowing what they mean. In other words, they'll be posing lots of questions and thoughts for people to ponder by themselves in due course. I also want to point out that, as with Francis, people are desperate sometimes for facts not to be true, which is why, for example, in response to the obvious physics and scientific evidence that things are determined, people desperately resort to something like quantum physics, as if somehow that saves us from it. That even makes it worse, because that means it's less determined, not more. I mean, less free will, not more. But anyway, I'm going to pose a lot of these. Please behave yourself and don't interrupt so rudely while I'm talking. But so what we're going to do is we're going to look at what happens with human robots, and I'll get the sex bit done with very quickly, but I want to give the context. My interest in this issue arose for two reasons. One is when I had recent surgery, a prostatectomy. The surgeon used a robotic device, robotic surgery, and when I came to, and he came and looked at me, examined me, he said, by the way, I wasn't anywhere near the surgery when I did that operation. He was on another floor in another building, not the same building, but another part of the building, looking at a computer screen and operating this thing like a computer game. And then he said to me, and Des and Dawn happened to fetch me after the op. It was at that very op. And then he said to me, by the way, I didn't even need to be in South Africa to do that op. I could have done it from anywhere. Any computer screen, anywhere, connected with a reliable connection, I could have done the op. And he said it gets even more interesting. They already have prototype software that will do the op completely by itself, the best surgery in the world. You'll be choosing between a Mac surgeon and a Windows surgeon or Microsoft surgeon, but surgeons like him, he said, are going to become probably quite soon, sooner than one realizes, obsolete. There will be no need for them, and the software already exists and operations are already being done without surgeons. And the reason it was robotic is because you can see the body and the parts, tenfold magnification, do much finer surgery. Spikes get stuck into the body and operate inside there through little cameras with scissors and lights. And so that I thought was interesting. Where is this going? How many other occupations and professions are going to be replaced by robots that may or may not look like human beings, but completely replace the function of human beings and do them better than human beings, which is what he said would be the case. Then the second interest of mine was I subscribed to Pinterest, which sends you photographs, and one of them, just interesting photographs, was about robot human beings, and particularly sexbots. Men ordering what used to be blow-up balloons, now they are robotic women. And what was interesting as I was scanning through these and looking at how lifelike they are, I'll show you some later, the disturbing part was people are ordering kiddie bots, children. You can buy babies, you can buy children, you can buy a robot of any age, and you can do what you like with it. You can cut it to pieces, have sex with it, abuse it, whatever you wish. And so that raised all sorts of interesting moral and legal questions. People right now are ordering children for kiddie sex, child sex. And it's so far unregulated. And I'm not saying as a libertarian, of course, that it should be. I'm just pointing out that that is a fact. So what happens is you have all sorts of interesting things in this age of robots and artificial intelligence, and I'm going to have to skip over a lot of stuff very quickly and then invite you during discussion time and question time to interrogate what I skip over, because I've got a lot to say and I've got to be quick about it all to vaguely get through. There's a geek discourse. Geeks, computer people, techie people, have this discussion. What about the future of artificial intelligence, humanoid robots? Francis spoke about whether human beings are robots. I'm doing the opposite. I'm going to talk about whether robots are human beings. So it sounds as if we have a similar topic. We don't. They're two opposite sides of the issue. So there's a lot of discussion amongst geeks and in science fiction, and there are movies, for example, about it. And, you know, one of them, the best-known ones are Westworld, Humans, and various others. In fact, there are lots. There are 2,808 movies about human robots. And you might think they're new. They're not, actually. The first one was in 1927, a German movie in which there were robots that were actually human. And it was called Metropolis, and it was about Maria's robot double. There was a duplicate person manufactured as way back as that. Then on the evolution of bots, which is the short-term geek word for it, and AI, artificial intelligence. Firstly, there was software. Now, I remember that going back to the 1970s or so, when we were told software was learning and becoming improved, and the term artificial intelligence was then used. It's become much, much more advanced now, of course, and then there are commonly now readily available on the internet, anyone can order them, sex robots for men. They're typically women. As they become more sophisticated, there's a likelihood that they're going to become sex bots or companion bots for women, assuming there's a gender difference in demand. Women will probably rather want somebody who's a friend and a companion and they go to dinner with and whatever it might be. I don't know. They might want, I don't know, horny men. Who knows? I don't know. But that's where it's going. So now I have some very big questions. What lies ahead? Now let's just think of the time ahead of us here. In the rest of my lifetime, let's say it's 25 years, what am I going to see before I die? In the next 25 years, what's going to happen? We're certainly going to have things walking around, sitting here, that look like a human being, and the only way you will know the difference is because someone will tell you, I'm a robot, I'm a human. It will no longer be apparent from looking, and it will increasingly not be apparent from talking, passing the Turing test, where you can have a conversation with this bot. They'll get better and better and better. But even if it's not 25 years, what will happen in 50 years, the average age of the people here? That time into the future, what will we have? And I'm walking across to try and avoid being in front of the mic and causing the feedback. Or 100 years, when my parents were young. Since then, that amount of time into the future, what are things going to look like? Or, for example, when my ancestors came to South Africa and stole the land, and Bach and Da Vinci were living, if that amount of time into the future, what are we going to see? And I'm speculating about that. I'm talking about that. It's not far into the future. It's where young people here, our children will experience it. Or if we look into the future as far as biblical times are behind us, 2,000 years, or the earliest civilizations, pharaonic Egypt, 6,000 years, or Mesopotamia, 10 or 12,000 years ago. So the amount of time in recorded human history into the future, what on earth is it going to look like? And never mind that, 50 years or less. So I'm going to deal with sex bots briefly, get them sort of out of the way, because that's the sexy bit that caused there to be quite a good turnout, I think. And after this you can go, because it gets boring after that. But the sex bots, this here is a genuine sex bot in a brothel. There's a brothel now where you go and you don't have human prostitutes, you have robotic prostitutes, of which this is one. And this is Kerry Welsh. Is he here? There he is. This is a photograph from Kerry Welsh, which he took himself. He goes to these sex trade fairs and things. And he sent me a video of this woman, this sex bot, giving someone a blowjob, and he said, why don't I show it? And I chose not to, because I thought it would be inappropriate for this audience, apart from which I find it disgusting and shocking and immoral, but that's different. So you can literally buy robots, or you can go and get a blowjob now from a robot, and so on. So what is the future? We're now off the sex bit, we've dealt with that. they are going to appear more and more like human. You'll see some of them that already do, but it'll literally be to the point where they are warm and the flesh is soft and they feel, if I were one of those robots of maybe 100 years from now, 50 years, who knows, you will not be able to tell I'm a robot even by touching me or looking at me or asking me. I could just lie to you and I'll smile. Sorry? Sorry? Yes, yes, you can order ones that cook. You can order ones that wash dishes. You can order ones, you can order, I'm going to go into the kinds of robots that you can already order and the ones that are going to be orderable soon. And I think that hopefully will make you all as fascinated by this question as I am. Their human behavior, they will show emotion, they will smile. They already got them, actually. But they'll just get better and better and better at interacting as if they're happy, sad, thinking, pensive, whatever. We'll see some pictures of ones that already exist, let alone the ones in the future. You'll be able to have robots of any age. You can have geriatrics, babies, any robot of whatever age you like. You can have ones that age. They can be from embryos to geriatrics, and ones that don't age, non-aging robots. You can get ones that get old with you, or ones that stay young while you get old, or ones that get younger. I mean, it's an interesting set of choices. And they will be fully manufactured humans in every sense. Now, I'm going to go into a bit about that because that sounds hard to believe. But once you cobble together the stuff that's already happened, making flesh, meat, from tissue cultures, making a heart, artificial heart has been made, making eyes that move and making artificial intelligent computer programs that are close to passing the Turing test. For those who don't know, that means that by talking to it, you can't tell whether or not it's a robot. Kerry Welsh over there, who gave me the pornography movie of a robot giving a blowjob, he owns a Tesla car. Now, I can tell you two of them actually. I can tell you something about that, which itself is interesting, the degree to which it is a robotic car, for which he's just a nuisance. He sits there where it would prefer not to have him because it would use up less power to have to carry him around. It can go around by itself. So fascinating stuff already happening. Oh, I will have one last thing about, that's a bit sort of naughty. Kerry's original one has got the new one. He told me that it used to have humor in it, but they've taken it out because people didn't like it. And you would say to the Tesla, "Do you love me?" And he said, just keep asking it the same question. But nowadays they're not this mischievous. And the Tesla would go into a sultry tone and say, "I don't know you well enough." And then you say, "Do you love me?" And it says, "I thought I told you I don't know you well enough." "Do you love me?" You just keep asking. And then it says, "Well, let me explain something. I'm a microchip and you're a human. We can't fall in love. Do you love me?" And then it says, "Would it help if I take you to a massage parlor?" Yes, so humans, this is this one here I want to go. Humans could be changed on demand. So you get your bot and you can amend the bot. You can send it back, get another one. You can say, "I want this one's eyes to be bigger." You can do sort of plastic surgery on your bots, make them change their hair color, their height, whatever it is, make them bigger, fatter, smaller, thinner, whatever it is you want. So bots will be infinitely variable, like plastic surgery on steroids. And then you could have robotic animals. They will happen. I mean, I'm saying this is, just understand, the younger people here will see that. You will be able to have a dog made, a cat, a budgie, a fish in a fish tank. You will be able to get robotic pets. You can have 2 or 3 of the same dog, the same cat, just if you really love your dog. And I know somebody here is emotional at this point because they might be losing a dog soon, but nonetheless, you could have another identical one, 3 or 4 identical ones, or one younger, older. Already now, of course, we can make a younger one. We can just make a clone by putting the artificial insemination into a pregnant dog and breed another identical dog to the one you've already got, or cat or budgie or fish or whatever it might be. Livestock. if you need livestock at all, because we're already at the point where probably no animals will be necessary to produce meat, and you'll produce meat of any kind. It's already being manufactured. You can now buy factory-made hamburgers, and they're working on factory-made steaks and T-bones and so on. So you can buy a factory-made wors that is meat that never came, and it's the same product. That must be understood. This isn't something like fake meat. This is real meat, fully fledged 100% meat made in a factory. And it's already available. This isn't so much the future. The interesting stuff is what's already true. And if you need livestock, you'll be able to produce it if you want sheep or wildlife. I mean, like, I don't know if you realize these flamingos we've seen out here are all battery-operated flamingo clones. They're not real birds. But seriously, if Velddrif's flamingos disappear, it'll be able to just order some from a factory, and they'll walk around and fly and do everything that other flamingos do. This here is to show you some of the robots that are already in the market with expressions, mannerisms. They look happy, sad, surprised, shocked, all in conversation. So you have a conversation right now, and it doesn't look quite like a person yet, but that's obviously quite close. And sorry, I'm in the way for you here. And there's a bot baby, a robotic baby. That's not a real human being. And this here is another robot. You can have a receptionist, a secretary, a boss. Just order whatever functioning robot you need. And they're already available. There are now robots like this that operate as reception at a desk, or waiters, waitrons, whatever, in restaurants. And they are going to get to the point where you actually cannot tell the difference. The only way you'll know is to ask. That's a quote from one of the newspaper reports I saw: sex robots modeled on your favorite celeb set to take over the market. This is the Scarlett Johansson, a robot of her, and you can buy her. You can buy a full Scarlett. She'll not walk up to the door, ring the bell, and say, "Hi, I'm Scarlett Johansson. I believe you want me." "Yes, thank you very much. Go and wash the dishes," or whatever it is Kerry had in mind. Yeah, or so. This is to show you what's happening. This is a porn. This is modern pornography doesn't need porn stars anymore. This is robotic Johansson. Now, the interesting question is, can she stop it? Should she be allowed to? Should she get royalties? There are already porn stars who are saying that if porn manufacturers don't use people, porn stars, they should get royalties if they use robots. They're a sort of Luddite objection to sex bots. And here's a receptionist, you know, they will talk and walk around and look, and more it'll become difficult to know which is which. This is I don't know why I called it Humanoid, and he's a presenter. He can be a lecturer, a professor, tutor, a trainer, whatever. News broadcaster, and this is the existing robot. This is a robot, lifelike robot, and they'll just get better and better and better very fast. This is a robot getting some routine maintenance over here, and you know, then they'll zip up his head again, and off he'll go on walking down the road, and no one will know the difference other than if you look behind his head at the zip under his hair. And here we are. You can clone. You can have two of the same person. Which one of these is the person, which one is the robot? You might be surprised to know which is which, but nonetheless, it's very close now to the point at which there can be two of you, and you can be together with each other and having a conversation. Now, for me, that's really a fantastic prospect, because I'm the most interesting person to talk to, and if I could talk to me, that'll be just perfect, yeah. And there'll be resurrection. We'll be able to bring back extinct species. We can either try and do it by DNA, or better still, we just make a pterodactyl, just manufacture one, order one. And we'll find a pterodactyl that can fly and quack, or whatever pterodactyls did. I don't know, growl, or whatever they did. Or if you want a really big one, you can get a Tyrannosaurus. Just manufacture them. And we're headed to there. You can have any person. You know, I can see we place an order. Let's have a bulk discount for 100 of each of them, you see. And it just make them. Make another Mandela, make another Einstein. And you literally would be able to have not only their intelligence, but more intelligent. You could make a super Einstein who looks like Einstein and you know, tells you the stuff, the marginal notes he made that nobody's ever worked out quite what it was. Future robots will be superbots. They will know everything. So literally, when you get your, I don't know, your Scarlett Johansson arrives at the door, she actually can answer any question. What's the ratio of nuns to vegetarians in Outer Mongolia? You know, and she'll just tell you. And so this will be, it's going to be surprisingly soon. You can have super geniuses that can do everything. And you know, what's left for humans to do? It's not going to be very obvious or clear. And bots themselves will make other bots. They'll make better robots than themselves. They'll be better than us at making robots. And so, you know, this is all sorts of fascinating implications. They make better bots for themselves, so they make their own robot in the end. And they may or may not be programmed with emotion. They may not be programmed with ambition. That's what you order. You order it according to your specs. Who will govern when we've got these robots? I mean, interesting things to ponder and speculate. Would these robots enslave human beings? Would they just decide we're useless and get rid of us and start replacing us completely? All of this is possible. Now, some legal questions, and these are the ones that are not dealt with that I could find anywhere in the discourse. There's a lot of discourse about what robots will do, what they will look like, how clever they will be, but there's very little jurisprudence. And having an eminent judge and eminent senior counsel and other lawyers in the room, this is some of the parts that fascinate me, is would bots have rights? Would they want the right to vote? Would they have their own voters' roll and vote on bot rights versus human rights? Would they complain about being neglected? Could you kidnap and imprison robots? One walking down the road gets locked away in a dungeon or something. They could obviously, and no doubt will be, an R, for example, Westworld movie used for perversion of all sorts of kinds. You could, if you're into torturing or cruelty, you could buy a human being that essentially is there for you to do what you like with, however. You could clone and impersonate actors, porn stars, and the question is, could you prohibit it? Could you prohibit them? Should you be allowed to prohibit someone making a dozen dawn another pair? If they didn't come, will you just order one? Could you say, no, that's violating my copyright or something? Or I want royalties if you make more of me. So all of this is going to have to be resolved and is already at the beginning of discussion. Historical figures like Einstein, Mozart, Hitler, I mean, you know, these can all be ordered. You send your specs in and say, this is the person I want. And could you murder robots? Well, one way to murder them is just not to plug the USB port in and the battery runs flat. Would they object to that? Would that be reasonable and fair? Or would they all be solar powered? I don't know. And what about when the robots are made out of real human flesh, which is manufactured? Remember, they are now making beef, mutton, fish, whatever. You can make it in a factory. Well, you can right now make human flesh. You could literally make a human steak, and you will be able to, before long, make a human body with human flesh and skin. And then the question is, if you eat that, are you a cannibal? If you order right now a human hamburger, is that cannibalism? Should that be allowed? Should it not be allowed? Is it veganism? Is it vegetarianism? If you eat factory-made meat, are you a vegetarian? You no longer need for animals. So what you do is you could clone celebrities. You take the most interesting, handsome, beautiful, clever, whatever people in the world, you just make more of them. Just create them, manufacture them, and they will walk around, they'll act in movies, you won't know the difference, and they will talk with artificial intelligence the way we do. You'd go to parties and braais and business meetings and that, and the only way you will know who around the braai is a person or a robot, well, you won't, because you'll ask and you don't know if they're telling you the truth. Are you a robot? And you say, no, I'm a person, but in fact he could just be telling a lie. It could be, his software could be to tell people I'm real, and then that'll appear to be the case. So there'll be no reliable way of knowing who is and isn't a robot. You pitch up at a dinner with a companion, and the people you sit and have a whole evening of chat and eating and drinking, and you go home and people say, was Leon's companion Francis, or was it a clone of Francis? Was it a robotic Francis who he brought to the dinner? You would not know. And surgery, you know, all sorts of things. A psychologist, a robotic psychologist would know all the latest theories, be perfectly good at it, be better than, and the surgeons, the best surgeons in the world will now be artificial intelligence programs. And of course the robots don't have to look like people to be surgeons, but they might. You would have boss bots and employment, people you employ, relationships. You could marry a bot. Now just think of this. You marry a robot and you have in the robot a real womb and you have a robot that becomes pregnant. I mean, this is what happens when you can make human tissue, which we can. So it's just a while until we turn this into an actual person. And I marry a Francis robot, and there's a child. Now, what is the child? Is the child a person or a robot, or some sort of hybrid? What are we going to call these people? How do we define a child? Is it human, robotic? Will there be a third category? Humans, robots, and hybrids. You know, would hybrids want special hybrid rights? And then essentially it'll be like mixed blood people, colored people, like how much one or the other are they? And I have all sorts of DNA testing to find out. Then there are all sorts of political implications. I'm going to run through some political and social, and then it'll be done. You know, government functions, and of course amongst some libertarians you're not allowed to mention a government function, but if you can just bear with me for a while, assuming that there are government functions, would we have politibots, you know, political robots? I think they'd be a lot better than actual politicians, but there we are, we can see them. But, you know, will they do planning, provide services? Will the directors general, how many members of the cabinet will be robots? How many will be people, given the way artificial intelligence and replication of humans is going? Now, I know that there's going to be lots of people who say this will never happen. Well, it might not, but certainly at the moment it looks as if it is going to happen, and it's a matter of time. It might be 1,000 years into the future, 2,000, as far as biblical times are behind us. The evidence seems to suggest it's going to be a lot less than that. Will there be political parties of robots and political parties of people? Will we have benevolent dictators who are robots? And more. Robots will be able to do everything. There's nothing a human now does that in theory a robot can't do, including companionship, giving talks at libertarian seminars, or attending. I mean, we didn't actually need any of you here. We could have just ordered a whole bundle of robots and had a robot addressing the thing. Now, there's bot denialism, as I call it. It's a bit like determinism denialism. We are desperate for it not to be true. So people will come up with any argument. They'll never have real human emotion. They won't like poetry. They won't enjoy sunsets. They won't be the same in moments of sharing and intimacy and so on. Well, fine, if you want to go into what I call robot or bot denialism, by all means, but the evidence certainly suggests that it's going to happen. We're going to have bots that are pretty much indistinguishable from human beings, and it's not too far into the future. Now, maybe that's true. Maybe bot denialism is legitimate. Maybe there is something about human beings that simply cannot be replicated in a manufactured human being. There will be something missing, a spirit, a heart, a soul, whatever it is. That could be true, but you will not know unless they tell you. You will sit with them and have a chat with them and not know whether what you're with. You touch them, they'll be warm, they'll have blood, they'll give birth, and so on, and you won't know the difference. What about wealth distribution? What about when everything is done by robots? There's no more need for human productivity. Now there might be, for a long time at least, a need for artists and musicians and certain types of things which are hard to imagine robots could replace, at least for a long time. But eventually there's every reason to believe that that too will be a function and capability of robots. Well, backups are interesting. Why do we need to die? Why not just have a backup of me on a computer? Stuart will, put me on his hard drive and plug me in on a USB port at the back here, and we just download my brain, download me. So if I have a stroke, which I nearly did not long ago, we can reinstall me, just load me, get me back from the backup. Might miss a few days of my thinking. I might not have backed up during this conference, so I might not get that back into my backup. But you can, then the interesting question is if we can dump an entire brain into a computer, again, the technology suggests that'll be possible. Is that then a human being or not? Does it have feelings? Can it argue with another computer? It can now argue with another computer. It can play chess against another computer. It would probably be a time when it can simulate a human being. And would that be you in the computer? Could you choose another body? Could you say, okay, I don't like this old one, I want another one, and you order one from a factory and you have yourself downloaded into it and you go off like that? Or could you be in any other form? I mean, do you actually have to be in a human body, or would you be happy to be a box on a table somewhere, or what do you call these things that fly around? A drone. You could become a drone. You could say, I want my brain put into a drone. This seems to be no reason why this shouldn't happen. You could occupy another person. I mean, say, for example, I think Martin Brassie over here is a particularly good-looking chap, and I say, well, I want to order a Martin Brassie and download my brain into, I want to be in his body, you see. So that seems to be a perfectly possible thing to do, and he's not looking very pleased about the prospect of two of him. And then, you could re-engineer yourself. I don't know how many of you know about CRISPR, this new stuff which is genetic engineering while you're alive. Literally, you can have your DNA sequences amended, clipped, fixed, changed. You can re-engineer yourself right now, and like I happen to have an artificial hip and an artificial knee, and at what point do we stop regarding me as the original Leon? How much re-engineering and amendment to the point at which we say, well, Leon is now no longer a person but a robot, and I'm already on the way to that event. And with this is fascinating stuff, by the way, this CRISPR stuff. I encourage you to read about it. It's absolutely intriguing. The technology already exists to literally restructure and manufacture you while you're alive right now. It's at the very embryonic early stages, but it's apparent where it's headed. And so just to close off with some interesting pictures, you could order two of these people. Now, if you want, you probably don't know who she is, and the reason because you come from a minority part of the world, namely the West. This is Aishwarya Rai, who has been considered or regarded as the most beautiful woman in the world, a Bollywood actress, and she's more famous than any of our actresses because there are just more people. And so you could order her, and this is Amitabh Bachchan, who's the most famous actor in the world, also Indian, and acted in more movies, Bollywood movies. Bollywood's bigger than Hollywood, and so these are regarded as, amongst many would say, the most good-looking man, the most good-looking woman on earth. You could order them. You could order a couple. As it happens, they've married each other, so the two best-looking people on earth happen to have married, and you could say, I want a couple. I'd like an Amitabh and Aishwarya, please deliver them on Thursday, and you'll get both. They'll walk up to the door and say, here we are, and then you can have them to dinner, go on holiday, bring them to the Libertarian conference, and so on. Now, this is really this is science fiction, but it's not science fiction that is too far out of reach. This is stuff that's happening. It's in the pipeline. It's in the manufacturing pipeline. So with that, there we have, I think that where we're going with actual existing technology, and it's really on the doorstep of these giant steps, fascinates me, and I hope it fascinates you. And I don't know if my speculations about legal problems, social problems, political issues are legitimate, but there we are. So now I expect to get into trouble. One of the people I would like to comment at some point is, of course, Kerry Welsh, because he's thought a lot about this too. And he's a friend from America who's come over to South Africa to be at the conference. I think I don't know who's going first. I think Ivo.
Just a quick observation. You talk about indistinguishable robots, and from a distance they will be indistinguishable.
Yeah.
In fact, it's already quite hard to tell sexbots apart from real people.
Yes.
But I would imagine that for a very long time into the future, it would be fairly simple to identify robots simply by using a scanner that could detect the electronics in their heads, because they will be electronic computers.
Yes.
So you will be able to detect the electronics, the electricity. You will be able to distinguish them from humans.
Yeah, no, I can see myself walking up to Graham and getting out my scanner and saying, just hold on a sec. Oh yes, you're a robot. Hi, how are you? That's a possibility, but just bearing in mind there was a little technical thing I mentioned there which is important, is we can now make flesh and blood, hearts, meat, veins, bones. So in other words, well, a long way. What's a long way? 100 years, 200 years, as far back as Van Riebeeck, as far back as Beethoven, as far, well, what is biblical times? But the point is that it's probably going to happen that your scanner will not be able to tell the difference, and it might not be too long. In other words, we might well have animals soon, a rat or something, that a scanner wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But then they'll come up with, I don't know, some kind of weird test. But I think that it's not too far into the future. People as far into the future as my father was in the past will probably see flesh and blood robots.
Leon, there is actually a case going on in America now. It's actually several, and it involves the production of what are clearly underage sex bots. And I'm wondering what should be the libertarian view on that? I mean, I understand that it is private property and all of that, but it is highly offensive to most people, and when I have tried to defend the underage sex bots, I have a difficult time.
Yes, I think that is, I did mention, I think it's very tough, and that's what got me interested, because when I was looking at these robotic things for sale on Pinterest, I mean, not some weird website, a popular photographic website, and there were underage bots, sex bots, and that startled me. It got me a shock. Now, of course, the libertarian argument could be that's the solution to pedophilia, is give them sex bots and let them leave real humans alone. The trouble is, at some point, the sex bot is, for all practical purposes, a human. But for a long time into the future, let's say. For the time being, the question becomes, are kiddie bots a solution or a problem? And I mean, that's the sort of thing on which I think an interesting jurisprudential discussion will happen. It's going to happen. I mean, we're sitting here with a former eminent judge, a retired eminent judge, and you know, people like him will one day be on the bench deciding that question in law, and there will be activists on both sides, some saying this is a solution to the problem of pedophilia, and some saying this encourages and stimulates it, and that debate will take place, and we'll have psychologists and experts, and that's what I'm throwing out. In other words, I'm saying those are the things that puzzle me. I'm very intrigued by the social, political, legal implications of this phenomenon, this revolution happening as we sit here now, before our eyes. I mean, it's occurring. We're in it. It's not some science fiction future.
Leon, one of the fundamental principles of being a libertarian, as I understand it, is it not on? Is it just my natural projection? Okay, one of the fundamental principles of being a libertarian, as I understand it, is that you are against regulation, and yet it seems to me essential that in the brave new world of having robots in every shape, color, or form, that regulation is utterly and totally essential to prevent, it leads on from the previous question, but to prevent the cloning of monsters such as Adolf Hitler and Mugabe and other people who were worse over history. So essentially, my question is regulation. Do you accept that there would have to be very strong regulation of to what extent one can create robots, and who will program this? Who will program them? And then my second part of the question is simply this. It's a short one. If robots can procreate, what is the future role of the human race, our species? Will we become redundant? Will there be none of us? Will we all become robots?
Yeah, thanks. That's Dawnbot and there's Desbot, and they could be replaced if they stop doing their gigs. But that to me is the big puzzle. Now, I'm a libertarian, so I'm against regulation. I'm not against regulation. I'm for liberty. I'm for freedom. The problem for me with a Hitler is that it violates liberty. So it's not regulation that I'm, as a libertarian, concerned about. It's freedom I'm concerned about. But you raise the interesting question, what about if robotic monsters are created? Terrible people, evil people, robots that torture and kidnap and murder. That's, of course, what many people will do, have robots to go and murder. If you're an Islamic fundamentalist, you might want to have robots that go and murder other people and so on and so forth. So there's a great demand, I think, for robotic monsters, terrible creatures. And out of, there are people, as you well know, who think Hitler was great, Mao was great, Stalin was great, and would want to recreate them. So quite how you deal with that, I don't know. I would be interested to know, we could now, with existing technology, from a hair of, say, Mozart, create another Mozart. But it'll be a baby. That we can do now. That's nothing new. What we might be able to do is order a fully grown Mozart at the time of his death, 27 or whatever it is, and see what he would have done had he lived to 80, and have Mozart alive after the original one died. Now, what law you have about this is exactly my question. It's what I ponder, and I don't know the answer. What was the second leg? Oh, what will happen to the future of humans? Yes. I should imagine that as these robots become more human and more lifelike, the distinction between the two will dwindle towards singularity, towards where you cannot tell the difference anymore by the sorts of tests that Ivo was mentioning. And it might take a long time, but it's headed there. And what will those robots do with us? They will be brighter than us, they will be cleverer than us, they'll know more than us, they'll be more powerful than us, they will be able to make their own robots that are even better than them. And, who knows? Well, you see, the we is an interesting question. What is we? If in this room half the people here were robots and half humans, would there be such a we and a non-we? If, in other words, the robots are fully human in every biological sense, which seems where we're headed. That's what puzzles me, what I ponder. Is there a we and a non-we? Are they getting rid of us, or is it just some of the people are redundant and not being bred and being disposed of, and other people, some of which were made in a factory, some of which were clones of Einstein, some of which were, I don't know, intelligent land-moving dolphins. So I think the future of humans is a future in which there will be humans that are hybrids, humans that are purebred, and humans that are factory-made. But it will become increasingly difficult and ultimately impossible to tell the difference.
Hi, Leon. Just a few comments on the advancement in AI.
Yeah.
Right. So as some counterpoint, in terms of how advanced it is, to my knowledge, and again, it's limited, but AI basically you have analysis and you have synthesis. So analysis is basically it can recognize language. You can chain some analysis together and can say, okay, well, this language we can translate in a certain way into this language, right? So it can do some symbolic extraction and it can place that symbolic extraction down into another language, which is similar to what Google Translate does. And the analysis part has actually gone very, very far, right? So we've had some real advances specifically with deep learning and analysis side of it, right? The second part is synthesis. So in other words, the robot has to come up with something, right? So if you go Google the thing Deep Dream, that's synthesis. It takes what it's learned through analysis and it now synthesizes something new. So in other words, you give it an image and you tell it, listen, I want to see this image as if it were painted by Van Gogh, for instance. I can actually come up with some very interesting things there. But synthesis is very far behind, at least in my knowledge, to the analysis part, right? So one of the issues with the analysis thing, for instance, is to get to that high level of analysis, we've got to show the thing millions of books to do a translation, millions and millions of books, right? So you compare that to a human child. We show a human child a truck for the first time, and then we showed a completely different type of truck in a different color. The second time the child sees the truck, he goes, oh, it's a yellow truck and it's bigger, and it's probably there for cattle or something to that effect, right? And we're still extremely far away from that specific thing. So both of those things we can do really fascinating things with. So for instance, we might be able to come up with something that can sell real estate to a human being far better than any real estate agent ever could. But that thing would not long pass the Turing test, for instance, right? So in other words, if you interacted with it for several weeks, you'd realize that something very, very odd is up with your real estate agent. The last part is like what they call generalized intelligence. So the idea of bots building other bots that are somehow intelligent. The thing is, those things don't really they don't have motivation. And that's really the hard part, is for us to actually write the fitness function to train this robot against. Because everything else we can tell it, listen, this is the outcome we want, or alternatively, we want you to just classify the world. But we can't give it motivation. It's incredibly difficult to program. And people like Elon Musk and so forth are very worried that we are somehow going to make some sort of a jump in terms of that motivational part. But as far as I can tell, there's been zero advances, as in almost nothing, that actually tell us that we're going to be able to build artificial minds. We might write things that interact with enough human chat interactions to simulate a person, but it will always be shallow. There will be like some sort of a limit to it. We won't be able to sort of like have the actual cunning and like incentive and motivation of a person over the long period of time. It might be able to pass the Turing test, which just basically says that in 60% of the cases, you can't tell the difference. But I really don't see any advances to say that we're going to reach generalized intelligence anytime soon, though.
Yeah, a couple of things. Firstly, in my view, I understand your comments, and partly I agree and partly I disagree based on my own reading. But to me, it's a statement of time. It might just be sooner or later. It seems to me no reason why a fully manufactured human brain shouldn't be possible. Now let's just do a leap of manufacturing. Once we're making human tissue, we can now make a heart out of human flesh. How long into the future, and it might be very long. You used words like never. I think that's strong language. You might say a long time, but I think never is very strong language. Yeah. Yes. So we make a brain that is indistinguishable from your brain. Every atom, every molecule, every protein, every subatomic particle, every vessel is identical to your existing brain. Now, I know you're a religious person, so you probably think there's something else there, the spirit or whatever it might be, that we won't have once we've made that brain. But then other people will just have to say, if we've got a complete, total, utter replica down to every molecule, why would that be different from your brain? And that you might say, I think you can't say never. I think you can say it will take a long time, and it probably will.
But that's not an artificial brain, that's a copy of my brain.
Okay, well, it's made in the brain factory. We order another one of you, or we order a bulk discount. We order 10 of your brain. Then we get them cheap.
We're going to do two more questions. Three
Yeah,
more
okay.
questions and then we're done. So
Yeah.
one, 2, 3, and then we're done. Sorry.
Leon, I just wanted to say, I'm a little skeptical of this idea of, that we're going to produce general-purpose robots very soon. In a restaurant, the real need to solve is to get food to my table. I don't need a robot that has a human face to do that. It could be a trolley or something like that. And in my house, I want my floor to be vacuumed. And even the robots they've built to do that today, they don't look like humans. They don't walk around with a dustpan and a duster.
Yeah.
And so I think before we get to this idea of this general purpose robot person, there will be many other special purpose robots walking around. So I guess I just wanted to make that point. We'll see that well before we see a general purpose robot that can do everything, because there's really no demand from the market to produce this ridiculously expensive robot that looks like a human to do a task that something that is built special purpose for can do much cheaper.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. I did say that the robot doesn't have to take a human form, and I did say the robots will be able to do everything. By that I meant one that's a psychologist, and one that's a surgeon, and one that's a mine worker, and so on and so forth. So yes, the general purpose one is actually where the sexbot thing becomes interesting, because people will want something as close as possible to a real human being. And women, in turn, will probably, if gender stereotypes are right, and I don't want to take a position on that, maybe want companions. Then they will want them to be the general purpose robot, not the thing that vacuums your floor. So yes, the robots that vacuum the floor are there already. I was driving through the Free State recently, and I saw at night a green light in the field, and I wondered what was that. And I stopped and waited for this thing to get closer, and it turned out to be a tractor plowing the field with no driver. It was a robotic tractor, and I've discovered there are apparently quite a few in the country. They cost a lot. There's a purpose-built robot that does what a tractor driver used to do, and a plow. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But I think the desire for, what did you call them, robots, general purpose robots will arise. For example, people who are socially inept, people who are lonely, people who are depressed, might well order a general purpose robot to be as if they've got a companion living with them. There will be a demand for that. It will obviously be expensive in the beginning, but eventually it will be like buying, Martin Brassey's fancy luxury car, or Kerry's Tesla or whatever. You'll just order one.
Just apologies for my behavior. Earlier, Dr. Piet got my meter a bit up, but it's down now. So can I just ask whether I'm a bit blonde, as you can see. So I would like to ask this gentleman from the US, whether his question was, would it be okay if a grown man has sex with a child bot? Was that the question?
Yeah, he was saying that's...
And as libertarians, whether we would have a problem with it. Was that the question?
Yes, they are already being supplied and ordered right now.
Yeah, they exist now.
So the question is, should the law stop it? What do we as libertarians say about that?
Well, as a Christian libertarian,
Yeah.
standing here as a mother of 5 children, who've protected my children like a tiger and a lion all my life,
Good for you.
I'm saying no. Because how will you distinguish whether that pedophile has got sex with my child, who's 5 years old, or whether it's a bot? Or are you going to take your thingy and go zoo, zoo, zoo to see whether it is so? Otherwise, we need a new law. We need something like natural law. Maybe that is something we must think about.
Leon, I was actually going to address
That's my
exactly
comment.
the same.
Thank you.
I was going to address exactly the same issue, seeing as a lot of people seem to have shied away from the question you asked originally. Is it okay to have sex with kiddie bots? There's 2 basic schools of thought on the matter. Right? One is that it encourages an immoral impulse, and it normalizes.
It condones it. It legitimizes it.
It condones it, it legitimizes it, normalizes it, and therefore it should be banned. In fact, a number of countries have already banned hand-drawn child porn on those grounds. They consider it actual child porn as if there was an actual child in the image, which there isn't. It's just a cartoon. But they've banned it on the grounds that it normalizes pedophilia. The other school of thought says that, look, pedophiles exist, just like any other types of criminals exist. This is a way to channel their unhealthy inclinations in a relatively harmless way, in a way that does not harm other human beings. Right? It involves drawn caricatures, it involves robots or whatever. You don't harm a robot. It's not immoral to harm a robot. So those are the 2 main schools of thought. I tend to go with the one that says it channels it in a harmless way and it might actually improve the situation for children that are currently being victimized by pedophiles. I'm not sure, I don't have any empirical data to back that up. That's just my instinctive view on that. What is your view on that?
Yeah, Ivo, we already have that debate, as everyone knows, regarding violence on television. And there's a huge amount of research and debate and discourse on whether having violence in TV programs promotes violence or is a solution to violence. Whether the same is true, obviously, of pornography. Does pornography encourage immoral, improper behavior, including, of course, the difficult things in pornography, rape and abuse, and even what's it called, where they kill people, snuff, and so on. So this is a debate I am not equipped to take a position on. So I think we know it, and I've mentioned it, but just pointing out that this is going to be increasingly an issue that has to be resolved. Bronwyn.
And so the only people who are going to be ordering kiddie bots are existing pedophiles.
Yes.
So rather than using them as a mechanism to placate pedophiles, really what they should be using them as a mechanism to find pedophiles.
Technical point on that. Being a pedophile is not illegal. Having sex with a child is. So acting in your pedophilia is illegal. Just simply having an inclination is not illegal.
But you raise a good prospect, if I may say, that libertarians won't all obviously agree with, that maybe what you do is you say you can own a kiddie bot if you're registered, and it's known, and you can be, so it might be the way of identifying the potential human rights violator. Yeah. This is, let me just immediately say, I don't want to pretend to have expertise on this question. All I know is that it's a question and can be discussed over dinner and debated. I happen to know that Eric sitting over here feels quite strongly the opposite of the lady over there. He's of the view that kiddie bots are a solution to pedophilia, and I know that because I've read him argue that somewhere. She's of the view that it stimulates pedophilia. I'm not in a position to say with which I agree.
So we're going to do one more question because then we quickly have to disappear. So we're going to do one more question, then we have to stop We have to do the changeover.
Thank you. Just a concluding comment. Thanks, Leon. I think we should look toward the positive possibilities. This is something that's going to happen. If indeed climate change is an issue, why aren't we doing stuff to mitigate the effects of it? All the efforts seem to be around criticizing and pointing fingers. So how can we use this new technology in a positive way? And just to conclude, there's so many wonderful legal minds in this gathering. What happens to the existing 2.3 million Botswana? Do they retain their citizenship as bots?
So, Louis, Ron, I think that's a great note on which to end. Yes, I think absolutely right. This is technology, and like all technology, the atomic bomb, whatever it is, it's potentially bad and potentially good. And I agree entirely. What we want to do, meaning the world, humanity, is to make the best of these extraordinary technological advances. They are breathtaking on a scale of nothing we've seen before. It is a completely new set of principles, and all other technology just made us better at stuff. This is technology that is just, you know, a quantum leap difference, and I agree entirely that if it can be harnessed and mobilized productively and efficiently, that's good. I do expect there will be some bad stories. It's not going to be all good. Yeah.